So we're back on the 2010 Dodge Nitro. Today I got my used instrument cluster in. So we actually had troubleshot this can fault and found that the instrument cluster was shorted and no communication. Spoke with the customer and he was working on the radio. We did find one of the can wires behind the radio buried. So what happened is it inadvertently got connected to a power source and blew one of the modules on the can. We hooked it up to the oscilloscope. This car doesn't have star connectors, so we had to go by module and unplug them. And eventually we found that the shorted module was the instrument cluster. So I called our local Dodge dealership. They told me that part, no big surprise, is discontinued. So used is our only option here. He had no comm with his gauge cluster, so we had no gauge functions. We had windshield wipers on all the time, which we believe is caused by the no comm issue from the gauge cluster on this to the TIPM. I have went on to my J-Box user card act and went onto their toolbox app to see if reflashing a used module is possible. Dodge requires you to purchase 3 different subscriptions to flash a module. In their toolbox they have a list of all the calibrations available from Dodge, Chrysler, and this part number, you can search that, and this part number that's on this module did not come up. So I do not believe that reflashing this, I don't think there's even a calibration from Dodge available for this. To check for sure, you have to purchase one of those subscriptions first to see if they have a calibration. But the sheet that I had, which was very recent, didn't list a calibration for this. So I don't think so. Dodge has basically abandoned support of this as far as the part, and it looks like the calibration as well. So we are on our own. We got to keep this thing from going to the junkyard. So I purchased a used instrument cluster. The old instrument cluster, when you would power up, even though it had no communication, would display a mileage briefly and then no bus on the little message center. I wrote the mileage down that this instrument cluster stopped at 212,668 miles. So we got our module in here. This is how it came to me. See, the needles are kind of askew. The cover is a little rough. I'm going to swap that out with the good clear plastic off of our other module if we can get this thing going here. We're going to pull the plugs where they have cut the connectors off of this. I'm going to get these out of here. We're going to plug this up and see if we can get it to communicate. There's a lot of variables here. We don't know if this has a VIN, if it's VIN locked, if it'll even communicate. If it will communicate, we don't know if the odometer being different on this unit from what's stored elsewhere on one of the modules in this car, if the odometer will log miles or if it will lock. Is pretty common for these if they're out of a certain range of the mileage that's on in the other module in the car. Sometimes the odometer will simply lock and not register miles. Ideally, we would like to get the odometer corrected to within a few hundred miles of what on this car, and so that his odometer will read properly and he won't have to brand this title with an odometer discrepancy. But at a bare minimum, we need to get this guy's gauges working and get his windshield wipers to quit running all the time so he can drive this car and use it. Let me get these plugs out of here and I'll get this hooked up on this can. We're going to hook to it with a scanner and maybe some other tools via CAN and see what we've got here. So bear with me. I'll get these old connectors out of here from the salvage yard and we'll go from there. All right, I got the connectors out. Let's get this plugged up to our harness here and see if we can communicate with this module. And what we just might be able to see here, let's see, obviously it appears the cluster stores the mileage in these, since we had a mileage shown on the odometer of the old cluster even though it wasn't communicating. Okay. Well, I have it plugged up. I haven't even keyed on yet. As you can see, we've got a mileage. I'm going to write that mileage down. We have 159,525 on the cluster. Looks like We have a door ajar message here. I noticed my speedometer is 0, but my tachometer is not. It may not until we get this thing started. But let's see what we've got here. So we've got 159,525, and that cluster has gone to sleep after sitting there after being plugged up the first time. Let's turn our key on. Key in ignition came up on the display. Looks like our tachometer did 0, so that's a good sign. We seem to have communication with this. Okay. We have low tire messages, check tire pressure monitor system messages. It's good. Check engine light is flashing. I'm plugging the scanner into the OBD connector here. Let's get our scanner turned on and booted up and see what we can see here. Now, I wasn't able to communicate with the old module because it was a no-com. So I wasn't even able to enter the module and see what functions I have in this scanner. If I have any functions for adjusting odometer, or I need to get into it and see if it has a VIN inside of this mod stored in this module, or at least if we can read that via CAN. If we cannot pull a VIN out of this module, that's probably a good sign that it may not transmit its VIN over CAN, so we may not have to worry about that. We may just be working on an odometer correction here. So I'm entering in here, doing a scan of all of our modules. We're going to let it try to auto ID here. Okay, and it did. As you'll notice, our key is on and our windshield wipers are not running, so that's a good sign. Okay. Asking us to confirm what vehicle. Let's do a quick smart scan. We're going to be littered with codes, I'm sure. Okay. So it looks like we have communication from all of our modules here that we should. Okay, cabin compartment node. So that is our instrument cluster. We don't have any DTCs in it. Let's pop around here and see what DTCs we have. We probably should just go ahead and clear these. Yeah, there are a bunch of lost communications with the clusters, so we're going to go ahead and clear these and see what comes back. Okay. See what's a permanent code. We'll probably have to key off and back on. We have a tire pressure sensor location undetermined, so that's good. Let's key off, key back on. We'll back out of these. We'll rescan. And then we'll get down to our real business. We want to get into this instrument cluster module here, see if it has a VIN in it. It looks like we did have one additional code pop up here, a door module. Okay, just a window not calibrated. We can run window calibrations here in a minute. So let's look at our instrument cluster. We're going to go ahead and enter this module. I want to see what functions I have to this, and I want to see module information. I'd like to see if it pulls a VIN out of this module. Okay, it looks like it's only pulled a part number and some basic information here. Okay. We can look at our special functions. We have update measurement unit, change the language preference, seatbelt alert reminder, and check VIN. Let's check this VIN, see if it. With this function, users can view the current or valid VIN or write a valid VIN. Okay, well that's good. If the ECU is replaced, this function may not be supported. It is recommended that the initialization, matching, and learning functions be performed. Current VIN. Does that match what we have on our car? Let's see here. Okay, it looks like it is showing the correct VIN for this car. So I don't know if it pulled that in when we hooked this up, or if it's pulling that out of another module. Shouldn't be. We're entered into the instrument cluster, so this is a good sign. It looks like we're okay on VIN number. So there's a pretty good chance that this thing, if we get this odometer corrected, it may just actually log miles. It may log miles now. What I'll probably do is I'll go ahead and start this vehicle and take it for a little test drive. I just want to see if the odometer is registering any miles at all. So let me do that. I'm going to unhook my equipment, get this vehicle out of the shop, just go around the block and see if this odometer will count up, even though I know there's a big discrepancy between what's on the cluster and what's stored elsewhere in the car. Okay, so I took this around the block, and you can see my odometer here. It has gone up a couple miles. So it is logging miles. The odometer is not locked, even though there is a discrepancy between it and the mileage stored on the vehicle. So that's a good thing for us. It makes it, all we need to do now is correct this odometer. Let me see if I can get into any of the modules on this car and possibly pull the existing mileage out of it. I can always correct it to what it was when the odometer quit working. Let's see if we can read special functions. I'm in the powertrain control module here. There's check powertrain control module odometer. Let's see. Performing this may change the state of the vehicle. Please exercise caution. Okay, this function will write the current mileage into a new PCM. Okay, well, we're not going to do that right now. We want to be in miles. Okay. Is odometer between 206,974 and 207,074? Let me see, what was my original, I believe it was 211,000 and change. So that's kind of odd. It seems like there's more mileage on the less mileage in the powertrain control module than was on the cluster. So apparently maybe this PCM has been put in at some point. So we're just going to go ahead and answer this. Doesn't matter. We're going to back out of this. Check odometer. Okay. Check odometer miscellaneous function complete. Okay. So, what we're going to do then, we're going to go with the larger of the two of the numbers, because if there was a mismatch before, there's going to be a mismatch afterward, but I'm not going to put anything less than the highest mileage I find on the car. I do not do odometer correction. I'm not going to help anybody roll anything back. The only time I will do anything with an odometer is a situation like this where our cluster's burnt out and I have the car. I can check the mileage that's in the other modules, the mileage that's in the cluster, if it'll power up as it did in this case, and go with the higher of those numbers. So I'm always going to err on the side of maybe the mileage being a bit more than what it should be, because I want no part of any kind of odometer scam. So I've got one tool that does some odometer correction by CAN. In other words, I won't have to disassemble this module. We're going to get that hooked up and see if it will do an odometer correction on this via CAN. If not, we're going to have to get this module apart and do some EEPROM work. So this could get interesting.